in case you're wondering, I've been married to the brain for 37 years. I'm also the subject of some of the books, if you want to buy any of the books. So I'm Big Mac married to the brain. Thanks.
He loves saying that. So I always have to give him a chance to introduce himself like that. So it's wonderful to be here. Please be seated. Thank you so much, Dr. Purley, for inviting me. And I am from South Africa, born in Zimbabwe, been in the States for the last 15 years, and I travel the globe. We reach millions now, helping people to capture their thoughts and renew their minds. So as you heard, got a lot of titles. My main focus is psychoneurobiology. So I've spent the last 40 years, a long time now, studying how the mind-brain-body connection works and how to empower all of us to manage our mind. Our mind is the most important thing. Your mind is not your brain. That we need to establish right up front. Your mind is not your brain. Your brain and your body, as you know, when you die, they disintegrate, okay? So your physical brain and body are amazing, but it's your mind that is the most amazing thing. Your mind is that prism through which everything filters. Your brain basically just becomes a host to your mind. And the reason I say that right up front is that for the past 40 to 50 years, with the biomedical model approach, the brain has become a very dominant factor. And people think the mind and the brain are the same thing. So you're going to see lots of evidence today of that. I am a scientist, but I'm also a therapist, and I also teach around the world, and I work with all age groups, all cultures, all languages, and not that I speak all the languages, so I know how to make things simple, okay, that you'll understand. Okay, so, and I know there's a lot of, also, last thing I'd like to say as I introduce is that I really do want to honor everyone's brilliance. We are brilliant. You know, we're made in the image of brilliance. So if I say some things that may sound like you need to hear them 3 or 4 times, that is okay. Because you can never just absorb something straight away. It is a good idea to go back and re-listen. So I do have a podcast where you can listen to these concepts broken down into smaller chunks. I interview lots of really interesting people. I have a great social media page where you can basically learn all these concepts daily. I encourage you. So there are ways of, and I've got lots of books, okay, to help you. And I have an app. So I walk you through literally like your therapist in how to capture thoughts and renew your mind. But we're going to talk today about what is your mind, how to manage your mental health and renew your mind daily, and that is obviously very in alignment with your whole theme this month. So I will cover things like anxiety and depression, but I'm going to lay a nice foundation for what you hear Dr. Sam talk about next week as well. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is we all need help in a hurry. I think you can agree. Life's challenges are really extreme at all stages of life. It's not obviously just this generation that's going through a lot. It is every generation has experienced their own problems. So it's a universal thing that we all battle with the challenges of life, and we battle with things like how to process the things that happen in our life. That is very normal. But we don't always get told how to manage those. So that is where my research comes in. As a psychoneurobiologist, I've looked at how, when we manage our mind, how that changes the brain and the body. So let's, for a moment, before we talk about help in a hurry, which is kind of your first step, is let's quickly talk a bit about the mind. When I talk about the mind, that is, I chose to use that word because it's such a universally accepted word for thousands of years. The mind represents the spirit and the soul. So when I talk about the mind, I'm talking about the spirit and the soul. The mind has different levels. The soul has got 2 parts, and the spirit is the biggest part. Now, we all know the spirit is what the spirit is. The spirit is your most intelligent part. It drives you, basically, and it's connected to the ultimate supreme spirit. And I like to say Godness as opposed to God. So we don't try and bring things down to our level, that we keep Godness in the level that it should be. So spirit is, you have your spirit connected to the spirit of God. On a scientific level, we talk about the spirit being the non-conscious mind, not unconscious. That's when you're asleep or under anesthesia or knocked out by a baseball bat or something. That's unconscious. Okay, so sleeping and so on. Non-conscious is N-O-N, conscious. The non-conscious mind is not spoken about enough, which is unfortunate. It's been my field of research for 40 years, and it's pretty much trying to understand the spirit level. It's trying to understand your spirit and how your spirit is connected to the supreme spirit, and how we can actually use that, because we are basically designed to be eternal beings. When this body dies, we still carry on. You are still you carry on. As you know, we have eternal life. It just changes and shifts. So it's so important that while we're on this earth, we learn how to understand, how to connect into the deeper spiritual part of who we are. And that is a scientific concept. And also then how we can learn to listen to the Spirit of God, because we all need help in a hurry all the time. So when we talk about our mind and mind management, I'm really talking about helping us to train ourselves to capture our thoughts and to tune in to this deeper spiritual level that we have, which is intelligence, and then connected to the Spirit of God. Okay? So the first place a little bit more about that. So that's the non-conscious mind. So then you get the conscious mind, which is what's awake when you're awake. Like now, your conscious mind is only awake when you're awake. Your non-conscious, your spirit level never goes to sleep. But your conscious mind does go to sleep. Your conscious mind is very messy, and so it should be, because it's with your conscious mind that you kind of do life. But if you just use your conscious mind, which is messy, and without accessing this non-conscious, that's when the problem set in. And that's what it means to pray and capture a thought and renew your mind. It is you in your conscious, messy mind tuning into the depths of your spiritual, non-conscious mind in a deliberate and intentional way. And you can train yourself to do that, because you are brilliant. And our brain is designed to respond very well to when we tune into our spiritual level. The brain only does what the mind tells it to do. So if you just live in the messiness of the conscious mind, then your brain becomes messy, your body becomes messy, your life becomes messy. It's never too late, that's the good news, because you are all going to have messy moments every day. We're all a little crazy. And that's a fact. Okay, and we all are going through the uncertainty of life. But you don't have to stay there. This is the beauty of it. We can train ourselves to self-regulate. We can train ourselves to recognize, I just got irritated. I just snapped at my spouse. I just got mad at someone in a meeting. I just had these thoughts that are making me feel irritated, and my whole day is just one big irritation. Whatever. You can train yourself to recognize that and do something about that. So that's in the day-to-day moments, and that's where help in a hurry comes in. Help in a hurry is, what do I do in the now moment when I'm about to go to work, my kids have a fight, the dog bites someone, your boss emails you and says you've got to do something that you should have done 10 days ago and you forgot, and and then your mother phones and something else, those moments. Or you're in a meeting and someone just reacts in a way that totally throws you off. Or you're preparing something for work, and you get that call from your kids at school, your children's teacher, life. In that moment, our messy mind will tend to dominate. And that's where the anxiety will flare up. And, if we don't get that pattern under control and don't understand that anxiety is actually a really good thing. Because anxiety in that moment is telling you something. It's a prompt, it's a signal to say, hey, be alert, but manage this alertness. So anxiety that's managed, depression that's managed are all very helpful things. They teach you things. They give you information. And when you know how to tune into them, then you can get that help in a hurry in that moment that you need. I'll go into a little bit more in depth about the depression and anxiety in a little bit further on as I explain this to you. But let's say we're in that moment where you've been caught off guard by something. This is where you can train yourself to actually recognize those signals, be aware of that irritation, grab it, and do something about it immediately. Now in therapy, I work with thousands of people. I have reached millions of people, as I mentioned already. And we did a survey, and we do this fairly frequently. And I said, what do you need from me? Like, what is your top needs? And what they would say is that we need to know how to change patterns and habits, which we're going to talk about today as well, which is very, very important because that's renewing the mind, okay? So we're going to talk about renewing the mind. But what they wanted help with was how to capture those thoughts in the moment. So it's things like, oh yeah, I've got stuck people-pleasing again. Oh darn, I've got stuck in that black and white thinking, and it's making me feel so like useless, or those intrusive thoughts, they're driving me crazy. Or I just want to punch that person in the face because they're saying that thing again. Those kinds of things. So we took the top 18 and I wrote a book about it. And that's my book that's coming out in August. And that's what's called Help in a Hurry. So it was in response. So while bad days are universal, knowing what to do when we are faced with the ups and downs of life is not. So you can take those moments and you can learn in 63 seconds, literally, you can learn how to manage those things and turn them around for you. So this book is filled with techniques and tips to help you do that. So basically, we can go through life from crisis to crisis. We can. Life is often a series of crises. But the more we let things happen to us, the more we are allowing those things to shape us, rather than using the bad times as opportunities to learn, to grow. Okay. If you can go back to the previous slide, we can go through life from crisis to crisis. It's a pink slide. That's what I'm reading from here. Okay, so if you have a crisis in your life, if you, let's say that every time that you don't get that parking spot, or there's that traffic issue, or you get that you can't find a password and you can't get into something, that irritation that rises, I'm going to give this as an example. If you allow that irritation to rise and you don't deal with it, tomorrow it's going to rise again, or later in the day it's going to rise again. You're going to have an irritated mindset. You're going to throw your neurophysiology out for the day. And if you never manage it, tomorrow you're more prone to get irritated even quicker at even more things. Within a few days, it's becoming a pattern, and by 63 days, it's an established network. And it's then that, because it's counter to your design, your structure, you're wired for love. We see that as scientists, that your mind-brain-body network is wired for love. We're not wired to not manage our irritation. I'm just using that as an example. We are wired to recognize, accept, give ourselves some grace, and then fix it. And when we fix it, we restore balance. If we don't and we stay stuck, that becomes a problem. So we can, when I say shape, but the more we allow it to happen, whatever you think about the most will grow. So you then shape the networks in your mind-brain-body connection. So this is how it happens. Imagine that around me is like a bubble. Okay, and that in that bubble there are all these clouds. So if you can use your imagination at the moment, you can visualize the sky outside with clouds in it, and that's around me at the moment. Each of you has that around you. It's called your biofield. It's nothing weird. It's pure science, and science and spirituality are two sides of the same coin. I have my deepest spiritual moments when I do my research. Okay, I still run clinical trials and so on. So when I say biofield or energy, it's the same thing that makes this computer work, your phone work, and when you go to the doctor and you're pregnant and you have a sonogram or you have an EKG, that's the same energy I'm talking about. Electromagnetic energy drives the world, okay? It also is the substance of how your mind, it's what we understand in our science in this current day and age, that the energy that gives that life force that's moving through our brain and our body that we pick up on an EKG or an ECG, or your aliveness, is basically an electromagnetic energy force. And each of us we're all unique. You know about that. You know about the unique teaching. You know that you're unique, and etc. So you each have your own unique biofield, and it makes your mind-brain-body connection work. So your heart is beating right now because of your mind. Your mind is driving this bubble around you, this energy force around you. That is, and it's through you and running through you and around you. Now, the little clouds that I'm asking you to visualize that are around you, imagine some of them are beautiful clouds, some are thunderstorms with lightning going through, and as you can imagine, the nice clouds are the happy experiences, and the thunderstorms are the tragedies or the dramas, or maybe it's just a little thunderstorm, so it's an irritation. So with that visual in your mind, what's happening is that all day long, from the moment you wake up till the moment you go to sleep, the experiences of life are being absorbed into your nonconscious mind, which is this whole field around you and through you that is connected to God, your uniqueness. So it all comes in. It's processed through this area of you, which is your mind, that's around and through you. When you're dead, it moves out and you weigh a little bit less. Okay? So as a person dies, their soul and spirit leave them. And you know that. This is all teachings that you read. And scientifically, we're seeing it too. There is so much science confirming this. And people would think this was woo-woo or Christians were crazy or whatever. But it's science. Okay, there's such a link between science and spirituality. It's very exciting. You can see I'm very, very excited about this. But there are universities around the world talking about how when a person dies, their body weighs less and their spirit continues, which is amazing, okay? So that part of you that drives the physical, it's as though for a short period of time, your spirit is encapsulated in this beautiful physical body of yours. But when you die, you carry on and the body goes, as we know. Okay, so in this biofield, your experience is like now. I'm talking to you, I'm telling you information. My words are auditory sound waves and electromagnetic sort of photons that are literally coming at you. I don't want to get too scientific. And that your mind absorbs that and builds that into these little clouds. So you're building a little cloud of all the information I'm giving you in your biofield. As you build it, this is happening at 400 billion actions per second, which is the speed, estimated speed of your spirit. Okay, so your spirit and your soul move very, very fast, but your spirit level, that the spirit part of you is so fast. It's incomprehensibly fast. It never switches off. It's beyond present, past, and future because Godness is beyond present, past, and future. So your substance of who you are is brilliant, okay? So everything that is going on in this room at the moment, besides including my words, is all being absorbed into this field. And as it's in this field, it is then being clustered together into a little thought cloud. Now, your non-conscious mind is doing all of this, and it does it really, 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 really fast. And it scans out what in the environment you don't need and helps you to focus in on what you do need. To give you some sort of idea of the speed, your non-conscious spiritual part of you can handle millions of conversations at once. Your conscious mind can only handle one conversation at once. That's the difference in speed of focus. So that's why your non-conscious mind takes it all in, filters out what gets rid of, unless you're taking in everything all day long. You wouldn't survive. Your body can't, your brain and body cannot handle all the stimulation you're getting. So your spirit filters out 95% of it, up to 95 to 99%. The stuff that stays inside is then filtered into your subconscious, and your subconscious can handle about 4 to 7 conversations at once. And it's put into your subconscious by design. In other words, what do you need to focus on? Your spiritual level is connected to God. The two are working. This relationship is working, whether you're not even aware of this. This is just how we are. And what you need to work on is placed in the subconscious. The subconscious then is like, hey, hello, trying to get your attention, like little pings, your alarm. And it is trying to get you to pay attention to those 4 to 7 things. And those 4 to 7 things you consciously and deliberately can ignore, and then you shape yourself in the wrong direction, or you can pay attention. Now, they're good, they're bad, they're ugly. They're things that you need to deal with. Good things that you need to build on, because we need to build on good stuff in our life, like gratitude and joyous moments and wonderful learning moments, like now learning new things. And then there's the patterns, the habits in our life that we need to deal with because they're destructive. They damage the brain and the body. A lot of the work I've done shows how when we keep those destructive thought patterns, those rain clouds that have got storms going through them, those will disrupt our biology and our mental health and how we function. 95% of lifestyle diseases today come from our thought life, those unmanaged clouds. Okay, so the clouds build fast. There's a filtering going on. Stuff is popped into your subconscious, and then this is all happening so fast. You're not even aware of this. This has been happening as I've been talking at speeds beyond your understanding. Then, once it's in the subconscious, a duplication happens. A copy is made of that information, and it's put into your brain, the physical brain, and the body. So there's a copy of what you're hearing now that goes into the clouds in your biofield, is put into your brain. And what it looks like in your brain is a network. So you've all heard of neurons and rewiring your brain and things like neuroplasticity. People talk about that a lot. I did some of the first neuroplasticity research in the world back in the late 80s, showing that you can heal your brain from traumatic brain injuries and so on. Okay, so and from trauma and so on. So neuroplasticity is this amazing ability that we have as humans to absorb experiences into this spiritual non-conscious, have this filtering process going on, pop it into the subconscious, and then what's in the subconscious gets duplicated and put into the brain and the body. Good news is that if it's a bad experience and you need to deal with it and it's shocking and it's whatever, it still goes into your, it'll catch your attention. Whatever catches your attention will go in the subconscious, will build into your brain and body, into the networks, change how you function. And the good news though is that that's not permanent. So your stories, the things that have happened to you, you'll never forget them, but they can be changed. You can change what they look like. So they can be a storm cloud with a distorted network, because once the storm cloud is placed into the brain, it becomes proteins, and those proteins grow into branches. You're going to see pictures in a moment. It's real, it's physical substance. It also changes every cell of your body. Okay, so if the memories are built in your body, that is why when you get anxious, you get a sore stomach, or so your mind plays out in your body. The body, your body is storing the memories as well. PTSD, traumas, when things come back and you get that gut-wrenching, heart palpitating, that is because memory isn't just in your brain. Your brain's only one of the places. Your memories are in the clouds of your mind, of your non-conscious mind. They're in the conscious mind. They're in the networks of the physical brain and inside every cell of your body. And you have somewhere between 37 and 100 trillion cells of your body. So you literally are making 37 to 100 trillion replications of what I'm saying to you. I mean, that's how amazing you are. That is why we need that filtering system, because we can't take everything in. Okay? So now, but because we have free will, we can choose to ignore what the subconscious is telling us. So those are the 4 to 7 conversations of what we need to pay attention to. We can ignore those. Or we can choose to, and if you do, then your mind just gets more messy, your brain and body get messy, your life gets messy. Or you can tune in and you can start trying to change that process, to regulate, because you can't change what's happened to you, but you can change what they look like inside of you. So you can change the storm cloud, can go from being a massive storm to just a tiny little storm. And you'll remember that storm, but it no longer controls you. You remove the emotional salience out of it and the power. You take the power out of it. In the brain, that ugly storm cloud would have looked like a network that's like a thorn tree, and it's all because what we see in the proteins is that they fold in correctly and the chemical is imbalanced. So it creates a distortion of a network that's not a healthy network, and in the body as well. And that's what increases our vulnerability to disease. So our vulnerability to disease comes from unmanaged minds, because unmanaged minds build into the brain and the body, and distortion in the brain and the body increase vulnerability to disease. Okay, so that's kind of the path that we know from science. We've known this. The ancients spoke about it thousands of years ago, and now we have the science to actually show that this is the case. So we also know, therefore, that if we can recognize and look at our mind, how we're showing up in life, we can track back to the thought patterns. We can then deconstruct and reconstruct what that wiring looks like in the brain and the body and the clouds. That network, so it's mind, brain, and body, the clouds in the mind, networks in the brain, and small little networks in the cells of the body. We can then rewire those, so we can change what they look like, and therefore change how it plays out into our future. Now, I don't want you to think that if you have any kind of illness that you're a big sinner. Please put that behind. That's just not how God works. Godness is love. What we know is that we have free will, we have choices, we have to learn, we have to grow, we have experiences. And what's so important is for us to recognize there's meaning to every experience that we have. There's meaning to every mistake we make. What we need to do is learn how to be honest with ourselves and self-regulate and look at, okay, this tragedy's happened, this is a pattern in my life, this is a habit, look at all of those and then work around rewiring those. And that's a lifelong journey. That's capturing thoughts and renewing your mind. It doesn't say anywhere that it's a one-off thing. It's renewing. Anyone here a teacher, you'll know that that's present continuous, which what that means simplistically is that you're supposed to always be capturing thoughts all day long and renewing all day long. So what I've done is research this and given you the science. So to help you to do this, you need techniques, because the science can go over your head. You need to know, what do I do? And that's why I've written Help in a Hurry, to help you, and I've got 19 books, as you heard, but Help in a Hurry, which is coming out on 5th of August, and we'll tell you some great news about that in a moment, helps you in the moment. So, and then I'm going to take you through an exercise in my other books, and my neurocycle will help you change your pattern. So let's have a look at a quick example. So some of the things that we need in the moment, because it starts now, and then we change patterns. So we've got to work on 2 levels. We've got to know how to manage now, and we've got to know how to manage the habits or the patterns in our life. So we've got to capture the now, renew. We've got to capture the patterns and renew. The patterns take longer. They take 63 days. It doesn't take 21 days to break down a habit. It takes 63. That's a huge part of the research that I have done. And if it's a big thing like a trauma, you'll probably need multiple cycles of 63 days. So some of my patients that have been through severe sexual abuse as a child, it would take up to 2 years. So 63 days, if you do your math, it's around about 6 cycles a year. So 365 divided by 63. So let's say that you have got some major big trauma you've gone through. You're not going to fix it in one cycle of 63 days. You're going to have to keep working on that, maybe 6 cycles over a period of a year or whatever, just to give you a time frame. But in the meantime, while you're working on that, you're dealing with now. So you need to know how to manage now as well as the patterns. And that's what I bring to the table, okay, based on hardcore science. So some of the things, help, I'm under pressure. What's going on in my head? This is what my audience centers. These are the things they want help with. My brain won't shut up. I want to punch that person in the face. I'm tired all the time. I mean, my regrets. I spelled that wrong. My regrets are holding me back. Okay, I can spell. So here's a little example. In the one chapter, Help, I'm Under Pressure, you get something called positive pressure. I'm just going to give you 2 little exercises we're going to do together, and then I'm going to dive into the habit formation, the renewing the mind over the long term, and show you some really cool brain images. Okay, so positive pressure is a great thing. We all thrive under pressure. We wired to deal with pressure. You may not have thought that. Positive pressure gives you the energy to get things done. The problem is that how you look at that. So if you see, oh my gosh, there's so much I've got to do, I can't do all of this. Okay, now I've immediately taken my energy to get things done, and I've distorted that, and I'm not going to get anything done. I'm just going to get worked up and feel sick. And I'm going to shape myself. My body's going to respond. My prolactin levels, which is a hormone that males and females have, that has been very well established in the scientific literature to be associated with doing what I just did. In other words, if you just keep on getting worked up, your prolactin levels will go out of their normal balance, and increased levels or unbalanced levels of prolactin, along with things like cortisol, along with things like DHEA, all those kinds of things, they will, if you keep having unbalanced levels of our neurochemicals and our hormones, our bodies are going to affect stem cells, which is your area. It's going to then create a weakness in our bodies, and over time, vulnerability increases. So it's not, I get irritated and I'm sick tomorrow. It is cumulative over time. So this is why we are supposed to capture all our thoughts in the moment and the patterns and renew them and live a lifestyle. And once you know how to do this, you just do it automatically. So that's why I have the app and everything, that you can literally put it on, and while you're getting ready in the morning, I walk you through the process, and you just work on whatever you're working on. Okay, so negative pressures, positive pressure gets twisted. And an example, this is a key one. I wanted to share this with you. This is something I used to do. Mac and I have been married 37 years. We've been together 38 and a half years. For the first, I think, almost 10 years of our marriage, even though I'm in this field, I would get into bed at night and I would tell Mac, I didn't get X, Y, and Z done. And I'd go to bed so frustrated. It affected my sleep. It didn't make me feel good. It was disruptive, and I knew better, but it was the negative pressure. I was getting energy in the wrong direction, or using it in the wrong way. Mac turned to me the one day and said, why don't you rather say what you did do? I mean, such a simple shift. But the minute you do that, all your neurophysiology changes. Instead of creating chemical chaos in your mind-brain-body network, you actually create health, because we're wired for love. So the minute that we regulate, it's harder to mess up our brain and body and our mind than it is to fix it. Isn't that great news? It's actually quicker to fix it than it is to mess it up. It takes a long time to mess up your mind, brain, body. It's very quick to fix. But most of us don't know that, so we just get stuck in these patterns. Okay, another quick example. My regrets are holding me back. That's a massive thing. Who doesn't battle with regrets? If only if I said this, if only I did that, I could have done that, I should have. It can drive you insane. I tell you, I don't know how many of the clinical, when I was practicing clinically, that was such a huge factor that people couldn't move beyond the now because they were so stuck in regrets. Without going into all the technical detail, you get something called a counterfactual. It's a fancy word for what's going to happen if you get stuck in that regret, okay? So you get something called an upward counterfactual. And an upward counterfactual basically is seeing it's seeing the positive side. So if I said this in that situation, then this would have happened, and it's something positive. And that is actually makes you feel worse. Because now you think, oh my gosh, look what could have happened. You don't know if it could have happened because it's a scenario that you are hoping happened. It's never actually happened. What happened, happened. But you can spend hours in an upward counterfactual, getting totally distressed. A downward counterfactual is saying, if I did that, then something worse would have happened. That's actually better. Because then you think, oh, well, thank God I didn't do that. You know, but then what we see from the research is to have a balance between the two, but not to stay there. So I would like to have done that. That's what I think I would have done. Okay, what have I learned? What can I do next time? So instead of going round and round and round and round, if only you could have, and the scenarios just grow, and you do upward, downward counterfactuals, fancy words for just going in the wrong direction, stop and say, okay, it's so important to acknowledge it's okay to feel like this. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay that I felt this. It's okay. I understand why I said, if only I did that, then this could have happened, whether it was an upward or downward one. Give yourself that grace and then stop. Time it. 63 seconds. You can do 10 or 15 or 20 seconds of that, and then the balance of that 63 seconds, you can go longer, but this is just a guideline. Use your 63 seconds as your guideline, and you don't want to stay stuck there. Acknowledge and say, okay, now what am I going to do? Okay? So another thing is another technique for this it's called employee-controlled indulging. So what you can do is you can, if you find there's a regret that you just need to spend more time on, then you can name it out loud or write it down. And then you write it down. Then you reflect by asking who, what, when, where, why. Why did I do this? Who was it involved? Whichever the WH questions apply. Answer them. Write them down. And then try to look at it from a different angle. In other words, what we see from the research is that help in a hurry, mind regulation, to tune, in other words, to bypass the messy mind, to pay attention to what the Spirit of God has put in your subconscious, and to tune into your wise spiritual level, because you've got all the answers in your wise spiritual level, because your spirit, non-conscious, is connected to wisdom. And so when you can bypass the messiness, you can tap into that wisdom. And what we see from the research, and we see from the readings of the wise, and people that have gone through life, and people that learn things, and even yourself, you've learned many things, is you've tapped into that wisdom. How many times has someone come to you and said, I've got this problem, and you listen, and because it's not you, it's so easy to give them advice. And you give brilliant advice. What have you done? You didn't get stuck in the messy conscious mind. You immediately slipped in, processed, and went into your wisdom, your non-conscious mind, worked with the ultimate source of wisdom, found a solution, and spoke it out. If you can do it for someone else, you can do it for yourself. I mean, how many times have you turned around and said, oh, I need to follow my own advice for a change? Okay, so this book, great news. Next week, Dr. Sam Purdy is going to be talking about depression, which is going to be very, very exciting. And we're also going to be giving away a whole lot of books on pre-order. The books aren't out yet. They're out on the 5th of August. So if you come next week, we are giving away a whole lot of books, of my books on pre-order. Obviously, the book won't be in your hands next week. You pre-order, and then you're going to be able to get it once the book is out. If you don't want to wait, you can just take a photograph here. You can pre-order on Amazon. If you want to pre-order a whole lot, there's all kinds of bonuses. So what I've got over here is a bunch of bonuses. So, for example, if you do pre-order, like if you come next week and get one of the free ones, you can get a masterclass, early bird access, private launch team. There's a bunch of stuff. You can take a picture of this. You can come see it at the book table and ask me more. Okay, all I want to do is give you help in a hurry. So I'm doing everything I possibly can to do that. And Dr. Sam Purdy has been working with us on that, so thank you. Okay, so now we're going to talk about this messy, let's go to the next slide, Mac 38, the big slide, the next one. There we go. Who wants to describe this? I was doing a lecture once, and I love showing this. We're not going to talk about this, don't worry. It's a summary of everything, okay? It's a summary of the theory of Caroline. So there we go. This was where I was giving a lecture once, and they had an artist, and the artist was drawing what I was saying. I thought it was brilliant, so I love showing it. Anyway, let's unpack this slowly. All of us want to change, okay? Let's go to the next slide. All of us want to change, and all of us are really good at intending to change. But that's only 4% of the issue. So part of the research I've done is how can we really get people to change those habits, those toxic habits, get those toxic thoughts under control, heal those traumas. If on a scale of 1 to 10, 1, 2, and 3 are those daily things that you need help in a hurry for, the 63-second things. The 4, 5, 6s, and 7s are those bad habits you develop, like just getting irritated about nothing for no reason, and just being an irritable person. That's an example. The 8, 9s, and 10s are the real traumas. The tragedies, the loss of a loved one, abuse, that kind of thing. So what I'm about to talk about applies to all these levels. All of us experience a combination of these over our lifetime. Research shows that more or less every 5 years we go through some major tragedy in our life. And that's unfortunate, and why? All those questions we ask, why? It's all part of learning. It's all part of free will. You can't control anyone else's reactions except your own. So people make bad decisions and bad choices because they're not listening to wisdom, and it impacts us, and we learn. And hopefully as a human race we get better and better. Difficult to think about that with what's going on in the world at the moment, but yes, we will get there. So all of us are good at intending to change, but that's only 4% of the journey, and most people give up. And people are good at this for about a week, intending to change and setting up the vision boards and the plans. But if you're going to really change, the majority, 66% of your time is spent in learning, and then 30% of the time in stabilizing this new way of functioning that you've learned. In other words, to clean up those thoughts, okay? Because the thought is the encapsulation of the whole experience. Think of the rain cloud again. Think of a cloud. Clouds are made of droplets of water. You all agree? Okay, so like a cloud is made up of droplets of water, a thought cloud is made up of all the droplets of the information in the experience. Example now, every word I'm saying is a droplet forming the cloud of Caroline's lecture, or whatever you want to call it. Okay? So, what we see from the research, go to the next slide, is that people are great at the intentions. You see where the line is going up, the straight line, and then there's like the little point where it's not going into the curved line. Everyone's good at that 4%. There's very few people that aren't good at the 4%. I'm going to change. The key comes around day 7, between day 4 and day 7, where you've got your free will comes in and you've got to choose to do it. So this is classic when you're trying to help a family member who's battling, or you're trying to help someone change, and you walk the journey with them, but they still don't make the right decisions. You can't make someone else change. You can only control your own change. What we can do is walk the journey to help people to get to the point and encourage them, but they have to do the work. Each of us, we are not structured to do the work for someone else. And this is where we want to encourage people and so on. This is why I do the research I do, to try and show people that if you can just get beyond day 7, it starts improving. So all the rest of that line is the rest of the healing journey. Here's a much easier way of understanding it. Let's go to the next slide. So I've done research, extensive research, qualitative, quantitative research, where we have looked at, I don't know why it looks so, okay, just the light on here, but essentially this is a simple version. There's day 1, there's day 63. To make a change in your life, to deal with a trauma, to deal with a toxic habit, that's going to take you 63 days. We've all heard about 21 days. The first 21 days, and you can see where that is, it's more or less there where the danger sign is. In the first 21 days, the first week, we've got the intention to change, and then the learning process starts. And I'm going to tell you what you do along this journey, but let's get the big picture first. Day 21 is what we've been so conditioned to think is when a habit is formed. You always get these 21-day things that are happening at the beginning of a year and so on. It was a few years ago, Dr. Meltzer in the 60s, who was a skin surgeon, not a skin surgeon, a cosmetic surgeon. And he found that his patients, okay, this is your world now, Dr. Purley, it takes around about 3 weeks for stem cells to form and healing. So he kind of took that out there, wrote a book, and suddenly it was this myth was born of, oh, well then every habit forms in 21 days. 21 is very significant, but it cycles. So what we see from the research is that in the first 21 days, you do a lot of work. You really face, this is how the trauma is showing up in my life with these emotions and these behaviors and these sensations in my body and these perspectives and how it's affecting my relationship. And I need to track back to what is that thought and what is all the details of that thought and what is the source, what is the root. You don't get stuck in the root. You can't change what someone did to you. But if you can find out, okay, that's why I'm showing up like this, that process of getting from the signals of behaviors, emotions, bodily sensations, and perspective to the thought, to the root of the thought and the cause, and then rebuilding, that takes about 21 days. Okay? But then this new way of thinking, think of it as a little plant that's been planted. It needs to be watered to grow. What we see in the brain is that the network is very unstable. So in the new cloud you formed is like kind of not strong enough yet, and the network in the brain and body is still very vulnerable. And that means that if you don't stabilize it, if you don't practice using that new way of thinking, it's going to basically disintegrate and become heat energy, because no energy is ever lost. Energy is always converted. Okay, so you don't want that to happen. And what that looks like is you think, geez, I've done all this work. I've been to therapy, or I've done the work, or I've done this, and now look, and I know where I was going to go, and I was almost there. What is wrong with me? Why am I back at square one? Why am I going round and round the mountain? Well, most likely you didn't push through to 63 days. You have to wire in them. Think of the World Wide Web. You've got one in your mind-brain-body network. You've got your own World Wide Web. And that web is tenuous until stabilized. And so what you want to do is practice every day. So what do? Part of the research I've done is to work out how does stuff go from outside to inside the clouds, the brain and the body. So in other words, how do thoughts form? And if I can work out that process, how do I reverse engineer? So that's what I did, and developed a theory and a system which I call the neurocycle. Neuro for brain, you're cycling. So what do you do each day? And this is available on iTunes, Google Store, and the web version. And there's a 30% off if you get through the web version, which we do as a special for conferences. It's not expensive anyway, but I mean, there's 30% off a year subscription. If you go to the next, you can take a screenshot of this, it's fine. And it's available everywhere. So if you go to our web version, if you go to neurocycle.app, Mac, if you go to the next slide, please, you'll see that there is 30% off for you if you guys use the code. It's coming up whenever it comes up. Okay, so essentially, the neurocycle is a 5-step process. I've taken complex science because my patients didn't, nice to hear the science, but what do I do? Okay, so the neurocycle is what do I do? And I'm going to go through the neurocycle very shortly. I want to show you some brain stuff, and then I'm going to walk you through the 5 steps. So what do you do every day on that healing journey? You are going to do the neurocycle. You're going to go through 5 steps daily. The first 21 days, it takes you around about first couple of days, maybe 30 minutes to get used to it. After that, you can knock it down to about 10 to 15 minutes. In phase 2, where you're spending around, which is the learning and stabilization phase, you take about 5 minutes to do the neurocycle. So in phase 2, you can get it done in 5 minutes, a minute per step. Phase 1, you spend a little bit longer. And when you go through that whole cycle, like I've trained therapists and people working in mental health around the world for years, when you build your therapy into those cycles, that's what I would do with my patients. My patients would literally be out of therapy within 3 months, which is good. That's what you want. You don't want to be reliant on me or anyone else. You want to be reliant on yourself, and you want to support each other. Okay, so that's really important. Okay, so then let's move on now and have a look a little bit. Let's have a look a little bit about a couple of things. Let's talk about intrusive thoughts are your new best friend. I'm going to give you a couple of slides now on just some content, summarize things, and move into the brain stuff, and then come back to the neurocycle. Okay, intrusive thoughts are your new best friend. We all think, help, those intrusive thoughts are driving me crazy, which is one of the chapters of my new book. But and you'll see when I unpack that chapter, you must embrace an intrusive thought. Do you know what an intrusive thought is? It is a message directly from the throne of grace, coming through your filtering non-conscious spirit level, popped into your subconscious and trying to get your attention. So in other words, it's something that you need to work on. So don't try and suppress them. Don't try and push them down. Deal with them. And with the neurocycle, that's what you do. When the intrusive thought comes up, you then gather awareness of it. That's step 1. Gather awareness. Gather means you're in control. So you say, okay, this is the intrusive thought. Name it. Acknowledge it. How does it make you feel? Where do you feel that in your body? How is it making you behave? What are you saying and doing? How is it shifting your perspective? Okay, that's the first step. You gather awareness of those signals. Then you reflect on that. Why? Who, what, when, where, why? And that's the second step. As you're doing these two steps, you are pulling that network that is in your mind, brain, body, that body-wide web, you're pulling it into the light. You're literally shining a torch on it. You're pulling it out of the subconscious into your conscious, but you are connected directly to your wisdom, your nonconscious, and you've opened the door to the wisdom of God. So in other words, you are analyzing yourself with God's guidance. I mean, that is powerful. And you are accessing what is inside of you. You have the answers inside of you. Okay? Doesn't mean that you don't have to go to therapy and everything like that. Those are there to support you, but you can't become reliant on another person. You get perspective from other people and techniques and tips and that kind of thing, but you've got to do the work, okay? So then the third step is, as this is coming up, it stimulates you. And then what you want to do is you want to dive in and you want to do what I call a mind storm, which is step number 3. And the mind storm is, and we're going to see the summaries in a moment. I'm just giving you the overview here. The mind storm is where your mind gets very stimulated. So what you do is when this is pulled up, the subconscious, when you mind storm, it's just whatever comes to your mind, the subconscious part of you reaches back into the wisdom. And everything that's related, that needs, that the details that God wants you to know to fix this issue, start being found by the subconscious, filtered into subconscious, into your conscious mind. So when you mind storm, you're gathering data from the deepest part of your wisdom. So powerful. Okay? And then the fourth step is you say, okay, with all this data, I've got these gathered awareness, I've reflected, I've done this mind storm. What does this mean? How can I see this differently? So there's a bunch of questions where you now reconceptualize. And then you finish the work for the day, because Rome was not built in a day. You're not supposed to solve this in a day. A new habit is formed a little bit at a time. So you don't solve the whole thing in day one. It's just a little bit. On the first day, all you may get is that, okay, I'm grumpy, I'm depressed, I'm snapping at everyone, and I think it's got something to do with an unresolved issue that I keep suppressing from childhood. I don't know what it is. And you from the first 4 steps, and then the 5th step is an action. So my action today is that each time when I'm feeling this grumpy mood, I'm going to tell myself, you know what? That's not you. That's who you've become because of something. So the 5th step is some kind of action that you take to get you through the day, to stop you going around and around and around the mountain. Okay, so that's a very quick walkthrough, and I walk through this in depth in the Neurocycle app and in my books too, Cleaning Up the Mental Mess, and the other books out there. So basically, you can't change your story, but you can change what it looks like inside of you. That is so powerful. So the neurocycle, you changing the rain cloud, the network, you're changing the brain. So now let's have a look inside the brain. Okay, so this is your brain, as you all know, obviously, but this is not who you are. Your brain does not control you. You are not, if you are depressed and anxious, it's not because your brain made you do it. Your brain is a host. Life happens. And as you process life into the clouds and the networks, and you wire that into your brain, and it wires in incorrectly, your brain will then get disrupted in its functioning, and so will your body, so your hormones, etc., etc. And that then feeds back into your conscious, messy mind, and it manifests as anxiety, depression, etc. So therefore, anxiety, depression are not the result of a genetic failing inside of you, or a broken brain, or a disease. They're definitely not diseases. They can create diseases. If we don't manage our stuff, eventually diseases will result. But the depression is not the disease. The depression is an emotional signal. Remember I said a few moments ago, the first thing you do is gather awareness of your emotions, your behaviors, your bodily sensations, and your perspectives. That's what the neurocycle walks you through. Emotion and depression and anxiety would fall under emotional warning signal. They're giving you information. Okay, so the mind uses the brain in that life is processed through the brain and the body. So we see the impact of the brain, not the cause in the brain. So we see the impact in the brain. Guys, what you do with your mind, what you do with your life, this is why we have to tap into the wisdom, is what's going to result in your brain. And fortunately, because of neuroplasticity being the fact that the mind builds networks into the brain and the body, you can also unwire them. You can rewire. So this plastic nature of the brain and the body means that whatever we built in badly from a reaction and a trauma and so on, is going to, you can rewire it. So the neurocycle is essentially helping you daily to rewire, and it takes a full 63 days minimum to rewire that network. So let's have a look at some more brain images. I'm going to show you now something from the Gasly lab. Mac, if you can go to the next slide, please. Okay, this is one of my favorite slides. This is using a lot of different brain technology, and essentially what this is what's happening in your brains right now, unique for each of you. So as you think, feel, and choose in response to life, and as it's going into the cloud, then the cloud puts it in the brain. That's what it looks like. This is what I mean. When life comes from the mind around you and gets put into your brain, a copy of it. It stays in the mind, but a copy goes into your brain. We see your brain responding on an energetic level, quantum level, electromagnetic level, and neurochemical level and electrochemical level. And that stimulates a genetic response, which means that we build proteins, which means we build a network. So if you look at the next slide, this is like a close-up basically of a network forming. So this is what's happening in your brains at the moment. Literally, I mean, it's slowed down and all that kind of thing. But essentially, when I talk about the mind cloud getting copied and put into the brain, this is what we're doing. So you're forming networks. And all of these networks are not cast in stone. You can rewire them. That's what the neurocycle is helping you do. So if you look at the next slide, it's amazing, this stuff. So you can control that. So renewing the mind is basically capturing the thought, and what you're seeing there is you changing that. You are influencing that. You directing the neuroplasticity. So capturing the thought and renewing the mind is you scientifically directing the neuroplasticity. What a gift that we have been given. What a gift. This is a very old cell, the slide is a very famous slide called glial cells, but essentially what this shows is these network patterns in the brain. They look like these are thoughts that are forming in the brain with these networks form. It's a very simplified example, but essentially you all know what a neuron looks like, and those are the dendrites. What we see from the research is that memory is stored in those dendrites, where you see the little branches, and it's also stored, that's in the brain, and it's also stored in between, and then it's also stored in the cells of the body. But I'm not going to go into too much technology, but this is basically gives you an idea of what, from Johns Hopkins University, trying to show these networks that you are forming now that can change. So when I talk about the mind-brain-body connection, clouds into the brain, that's what it looks like inside the brain and the body. And that's what you're rewiring. That's renewing the mind. So when you have an experience like you're going through depression, you shouldn't say, I am depressed or I am depression. You can rather say, okay, I'm feeling the emotional warning signal of depression because of something. Let me see what that because of is, and then you start doing the work. Okay, what else am I feeling besides depression? Anxiety, frustration, irritation. What are the emotions? Where do I feel that in my body? My gut's giving me issues. How's it affecting my behavior? I'm withdrawing. How's it affecting my perspective? Life sucks. Okay, good start. Now let's start digging, and that's what you're doing with the neurocycle. You work through that process. You are your own best therapist, because you have all the tools inside of you. And your therapists or counselors or coaches are there to encourage, to help give you perspective. Because sometimes we can get stuck and we just say, hey, I think this is right, but what do you think? But don't rely on someone else. Don't put that on someone else. We have to do it ourselves. Okay, so thoughts look like, this is just another analogy for you. I talk about thoughts looking like clouds, or you can see them as, they look like a cloud with like a tree-like cloud. So imagine these clouds with like tree shape, and so your memories cluster together to form the thoughts. The thoughts look like trees. Thoughts are physical structures in the brain and the body made of proteins. The roots are the experiences. The branches are the individual's interpretation of the experience. So that's just another way of understanding it. So what I've shown in my research is that if you rewire, and this is just to give you analogies to visualize this, you'll see half the tree is all nice and half the tree doesn't look so nice over there at day 21. So as I said, that's a danger zone. On your healing journey, there's a danger zone point, and this is where we feel like, hey, I got this, I'm good. But you're not good yet. Because if you stop, it's half and half, it can go back. You can revert back. So you've got to push through. Notice how by day 63, the big healthy part's big and the little part is just small. It's lost its power, has no control over you. You now will operate in the new way of functioning. There's no chance of you slipping back unless you go and regrow that. You can always regrow something. Up to you. If you decide to go back and regret again, that's your choice. Wouldn't recommend it, but you can do that. But that's, when it's like that, it's not controlling you. You are controlling the issue. So when I said earlier on, You can't get rid of your story. You'll always remember stuff that's happened to you, whatever tragedy, whatever abuse, whatever experience. You will always remember that. But it's not controlling you. You have a new network, a new mind, brain, body, new cloud, new healthy tree, new wiring in your body, and that will make you function in a different way. And that's how you clean up your mess. Okay, so I think I've gone way over time. I can talk for hours about this. Thank you for listening. I've got lots of stuff at the back. Don't forget to come back next week and listen to Dr. Sam, and you can put your name down for a pre-order, or you can pre-order yourself. And if you have any questions, I'll be at the back. Thank you so much.